All right, when you're solving equations, first thing you have to do is make sure your variable is on the left side. So for number 1, -5 is less than or equal to y plus 8. I'm going to rewrite this to be y plus 8. I have to flip my inequality sign because I flipped my inequality. So I have y plus 8 is greater than or equal to -5. Now I solve this the same way I solved one-step equations. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. That leaves me with y is greater than or equal to -5 minus 8. When I'm subtracting, I use my integer rules. I have to do keep, change, opposite to turn it into an addition problem. And now I look at my signs. My signs are the same, so I'm going to add. 5 plus 8 is 13. They're both negative. So y is greater than or equal to -13. When you are graphing, make sure you're putting your numbers. Most of the time you'll be given a number line, so you won't have to put the numbers on there. But if you have to put the numbers on there, make sure your numbers are going in an even increment. You're going by 1s, or you're going by 2s, or you're going by 5s, whatever. You just can't skip your numbers around. All right, this is greater than or equal to, so it's going to be a closed circle on -13. And I'm going to shade everything to the right because y is greater than or equal to -13. Everything that we're shading represents a possible solution for this inequality. That's why we did a closed circle, because -13 is a possible solution. -13 is greater than or equal to -13. Number 2, my variable is already on the left, so I'm just going to subtract 2 from both sides. When I subtract, I have to use additive inverse to do keep, change, opposite. Now my sides are the same, so I'm going to add, and that gives me x is greater than -20. I'm going to make my number line. Remember that negatives are the opposite of positives, so you've got to go the opposite way when you're making a negative number line. It is an open circle because -20 is not a possible solution, so I'm not graphing -20. I'm just putting an open circle, and then I'm going to shade everything to the right. The inequality sign is pointing to the right when my variable is on the left side, so I can shade everything on the number line to the right. And then number 3, the opposite of subtracting 20 is adding 20. -10 plus 20 is +10 because my signs are different. I have to subtract. I'm going to make my number line and put a closed circle and shade everything to the right because my inequality sign is pointing to the right. All right, when you're multiplying or dividing both sides of an inequality problem with a negative number, you're going to flip your inequality sign. So when you multiply or divide a number by negative, it changes the sign of that number for the product or the quotient. That's the same thing that we're doing here. We're just changing our sign to go in the opposite direction for our inequality sign. So number 1, -5 times g is less than or equal to 8. I'm dividing by -5 on both sides, which means I'm going to flip my inequality symbol in the opposite direction. So if you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, you're going to flip that inequality. Negative 5 is now being divided by on both sides. That leaves me with G is greater than or equal to. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. And 8 divided by 5, I can't do that evenly, so I can leave it in fraction form. 5 will go into 8 one time with 3 left over. So I'm going to graph G is greater than or equal to negative 1 3/5. If you have to make a number line with fractions, you do it the same way you graph integers. You're just changing the numerator. You're going up by 1 or down by 1 for the numerator in order to get to the next fraction on the number line. And then I use my graphing rules. There's a line under it to represent or equal to, so it's going to be a closed circle. And I'm shading everything to the right. You go based off of your final answer, not the symbol from the original problem. Number 2, I'm multiplying both sides by a positive number. So even though there's a negative on the right side, I'm multiplying by a positive number, so I'm not going to change my inequality sign. So this stays x is greater than. Negative 18 times 2 is negative 36. And now I make my number line. There's going to be an open circle, and I'm shading everything to the right. All right, number 3. My variable is on the right, so I'm going to rewrite it so the variable's on the left, which means I have to flip my inequality sign. I have negative 10 times y is less than or equal to negative 4. I'm going to divide by negative 10 on both sides. Since I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip my inequality sign. So at this point, I have now flipped my inequality 2 times. This leaves me with y is greater than or equal to a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 4 divided by 10 cannot be divided evenly, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction, 4 over 10, which will simplify by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that leaves me with 2/5. I'm going to put a closed circle and shade everything to the right. All right, for two-step equations, first thing you have to do is make sure your variable is on the left. So I'm going to rewrite number 1 to be f divided by 2 plus 2 4/10 is greater than negative 3. Now, just like with two-step equations, first thing I have to get rid of is whatever I'm adding or subtracting, my constant. So I'm adding 2 4/10. The opposite of adding is subtracting 2 4/10, which leaves me with f divided by 2 is greater than negative 5 4/10. Because when you subtract, you have to do keep, change, opposite. And now my signs are the same, so I have added them and kept the sign. Now I have a one-step division problem. F divided by 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. And F is greater than negative 10 8/10. So I've made my number line. I'm going to put an open circle on negative 10 and 8/10, and I'm going to shade everything to the right. All right, number 2. The variable's already on the left, so I'm going to subtract 8. Negative 20 minus 8 becomes negative 20 plus negative 8, which is negative 28. Negative 7y is greater than or equal to negative 28. I'm going to divide by negative 7 on both sides. I'm dividing by negative, so I have to flip my inequality sign. Y is less than or equal to, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So I'm going to put a closed circle on 4 and shade everything to the left.